So first thing I want to do is go over communication overview. Okay, so that Trinity of Communication, I'm going to kick that like a dead horse because none of this NLP is going to saturate. None of this is going to be effective if you're not nailing that Trinity of Communication, right? And this, like I've said before, this isn't like a high school test where like, hey, I'm shooting for a good 70%, right? When I'm going over that Trinity of Communication, I want 100%. Now, granted, 55% of it comes from my nonverbal, 38 of it's coming from the tonality, and then that 7% of the actual word selection. I don't want to mess up any of these because I want all of them to be in congruence. So that way the person that I'm talking to truly understands that I'm not a threat, that we are the same, and that they can trust me. Because once they feel that they can trust me, they're going to be much more open to influence from me. And this is where you have to have integrity because I want to influence them to do what is in their best interest, right? I don't want to influence them to just do what I want them to do because what I want them to do is in their best interest. So you really have to make sure that you're in touch with your integrity with this one. So today we are going to specifically be going over quotes and extended quotes. So since the last time we went over the Trinity of Communication, do we have anybody that's tried to apply this or has had any failures or experiences successes that they can share?
Not successes, but frustrations. Just on the phone for the past week, like, all right, let's really slow down, try to match this, and it is brutal. But I have seen the way that it can work just in small bits, like, oh, I got that. That worked a little bit. It didn't, completely change the conversation, but hey, I got there. So it does work. It is very frustrating at the beginning, but practice makes perfect.
No, and that's probably the most common feedback that I've heard from people when they first become cognizant of it's our responsibility to adjust my speed. It's my responsibility to be aware of my body posture. It's my responsibility to select the words appropriately, and it's not their responsibility. And that's why it's frustrating because you're like, oh, you're not doing what you're supposed to, but they don't know any different. They don't know what they don't know. But that's why this is kind of Jedi mind trick, because you do know. And because you have that ownership, you can make the adjustments in your cadence. You can make the adjustments in your volume, your facial expressions, you can be very cognizant of. I know for me personally, that's the biggest one for me to be aware of. Because if I'm having a conversation with somebody and they say something stupid, I look at them like they're stupid. Immediately. That is why you always get that facial expression. Yeah.
So I have been practicing this with slowing down and like allowing space for people to speak. But I ran into a new situation, which isn't usually a problem for me, that the person spoke a lot faster than I did and talked over me more. And I don't really know how, I don't ever want to cut someone off, but every time I opened my mouth, she was cutting me off. So how do you match their vibe when their vibe is rude as hell?
So I'll find the call. I would say maybe a week ago. I was on Follow Up Boss. I made a phone call and the client literally was one of those people that would just cut you off to keep talking. So I started doing it right back to him. Like I would literally let him cut me off. And then in the middle of their next sentence, I'd be like, oh, but then the next time, did I tell you about this thing and this other thing? And what happens is they start to go, oh, you take the floor. You match that energy, right? But you've got to be like little kid gloves, right? And that's that tonality. I need to hear the cadence in which you speak. I need to hear when you pause, how long you pause, right? Because to them, they might have a faster cadence than you do. So when they stop speaking, in their mind, they've stopped, gave you a chance to talk, but you didn't start talking when they would have wanted to. So they're already formulating what they're going to say next when you start talking, and they're just going to keep going at their cadence. So once you can get their cadence down and you cut them off and match their cadence, then you guys are speaking at the same energy level and you can start bringing them down. Right. But yeah, it'll take them cutting you off a couple times. You'd be like, okay, I see where you're going now. And you let them cut you off. And then once you get the gist of what they're saying, that's when you interject and redirect the conversation and try to match their cadence. So this is why this Trinity of Communication, like, it is literally a part of everything we do. There isn't like, oh, I'm going to go to work today, I should pay attention to my cadence and my tonality, my body language, right? This is something that every conversation, every interaction we have with another human being incorporates these three things. And you'll know when you don't get it right. It'll feel awkward. It'll feel disingenuous. It just won't be there, right? JC.
I didn't want what you just said a little bit ago to be overlooked, because those type of people often take the conversation in random directions. So what you said is redirecting them back on is highly important, because that could be a 30-minute conversation and you get zero out of it. But if you do what you said, not only match what they're doing, but also steer it back on track, maybe now we have a 5-minute conversation and we get some progress.
Yep. Yeah, if they get the opportunity to run, they're like a dog off the leash. They're just like, ah! So we've got to kind of harness that, right? And in order to do that, you have to match their energy and then bring them to the level in which you want to interact. So keep this in mind as we're going through, okay? And remember, the only way you can really get good with this stuff is repetition.